timing of this series is no accident. See, this is the first week of a new year, which means we are coming out of the chaos of Christmas. Do you remember it last week? The chaos of Christmas. Your house was full, your schedule was insane, you ate more than you wanted to, you spent more than you wanted to. And just to recover, you spent large portions last week existing in sweatpants. Do you remember that? You were like scraping old cheese logs onto a Triscuit and calling it breakfast. It was pretty desperate. It was pretty bad. But see, this is what we need to come to terms with this week. That the decorations are slowly going away, the calendar resets, but the chaos is still there. The tension isn't resolved, the loneliness doesn't magically disappear, the anxiety doesn't care what year it is. That's why we want to start here, because this year can be different. But only if we're honest about what we're dealing with, only if we're honest what we're talking about. Real talk about the deserts of loneliness, the darkness of depression, the monsters of temptation that wreak havoc in our lives. And today we want to start with fear and uncertainty and anxiety. The Bible often describes fear as a flood, of anxiety of waters that kind of rise, they overwhelm us, they threaten to pull us under. And I'm super passionate about this because I've seen something happen. I've watched our culture sink deeper and deeper into fear, and it bugs me. Like, it really annoys me. The 24/7 news cycles that are like, we come to you tonight, nation under peril, where 30 million people are under threat of a snowstorm. It's like, it's a snow day, okay? Relax. No one's gonna die. We have these echo chambers on social media of, information that seeks to manipulate us into anxious, emotional responses. They're selling stuff. We gotta realize this. We scroll through Instagram and, we see like friends' pictures, and that's innocent enough, but then, it just slowly builds. Like, oh, she has like perfect hair. Look, they have like the perfect body, perfect families. They're going on perfect vacations. They can do stuff that I can't do. And so you get FOMO, right? Which everybody knows is the fear of missing out. But even that is starting to multiply. You got all these foes going on. You got FOBO, FOPO, FOFU, FOMU, FODA. It's too hard to keep up with. Everything is making us anxious right now. So that's why I say I'm passionate about this, because I've seen this happen. I have proof. I have scientific, definitive proof that we are more fearful than we used to be. Just look at the shows we watch. What we relax to at night. It's weird, okay? We come home from a long day at work and we're stressed out, right? So we put something on TV, we stream a show, and all of the major shows right now are about people who kill people and how to stop killers from killing people by killing the people that kill people. Come on, it's crazy. Like, what are we doing to ourselves? It's crazy. Are we really relaxing? That's the question, okay? So I think this show needs to make a comeback. Come on. The A-Team solved everything. By the end of the episode, life was good, and no one died. There was a lot of shooting, but no one was killed. It was amazing. You gotta check it out sometime. So, see, that's all changed. And it's funny, I've seen this drift happen, and I wanted to see how much. So I decided to ask Chat. I said, Chat, tell me, what are the top 5 shows that are being streamed right now? Just give me a phrase to sum up what these top 5 shows, what the tone of them is. Like, what does it describe that we're relaxing to? And listen, whether it's a mirror or a script, we're being influenced by this. So these were the top 5 descriptors. This is what AI says we relax to. That fear is everywhere, hope is fragile, control is the most important thing to seek after, peace is temporary, and chaos is given. That's when I knew I had to use this. That's when I knew I had to say, look, we got to talk about this. And look, I'm not culture bashing. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty for what you're watching. I'm just trying to show if you got some anxiousness in your life, it might be coming from this. And we have slowly allowed the water level of fear and uncertainty and anxiety to rise in our culture. Because if you look at this list, just soak that in for a second. Just think, this is what we're feeding on. This is what we fed on 30 years ago. Do you see the difference? They're smiling, people. And no one gets shot. It's amazing. So I know I'm having some fun with this, but I'm just saying that fear is silently becoming like a way of life. It's shaping who we're becoming. And if it hasn't, then God bless you. It's awesome. If you can live without fear, go for it. But for some of us, it's driving us inward. It makes us stay in instead of going out because going out feels like a risk. We keep our thoughts and our feelings inside because we're afraid of bothering people or we don't ask for help. So we carry these heavy emotional loads. Or we're afraid to talk to others because we feel like we fear what their reaction might be. So safety becomes more important than honesty. And so what do? We wind up ghosting people, right? Or we unfollow people. Or we just silently disappear instead of talking about it. It's like, if I just stay small, I won't get hurt. And see, that's what fear does. You see what I'm doing? We think that fear ruins our lives. No, fear shrinks our lives. It makes everything small and manageable. So you go to bed again, not talking to your spouse about something you need to talk about. You finish the week again, not taking a chance and saying, yeah, I'd like to go. Here, I want to go with you. And going out with friends. And dating? Have we even talked about dating? Like, it feels safer to be lonely than vulnerable. So I want to ask you, are you feeling some of this? Is this connecting? And hey, is it time for a change? Because fear can drive us inward, but fear can also do the opposite. It can make us into control freaks. Everything has to be done your way. You have to have the last word. You have to make all the plans. Everyone has to agree with you. You have to be the crusader on social media that tells everybody else they're wrong. Some of the loudest, most strident people I know are the most frightened people I know. And see, this is what I'm getting at. I think fear can shape the way that we live. It can press you into a mold that is small. And I don't think that's any way to live. Because listen, fear is real. We can't ignore or pretend that we're fearless, but it does not have to be in charge anymore. So I want you to open up to Genesis chapter 1. You got your Bibles in front of you. Maybe you want to bring it up on your phone. We're going to be looking at Genesis chapter 1. We're going to go right back to the start. And it's funny, I thought I was going to be on page 1, but apparently we're on page 3. Apparently the Bible people are like, no, we need a title. Okay. So page 3 is going to be Genesis chapter 1, verse 1. As you're opening there, this is the opening story of how God created everything we see around us. And at some point, I would love to walk through this and talk about what all this means and why it's all important. But today, we just want to focus on one thing, how God interacts with the chaos. So you're going to see something in it, talking about the deep dark. And it's basically talking about the chaos. And this is how the Bible talks about the deep, dark chaos. In verse 1, it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was formless and empty, and darkness covered the deep waters. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Then God said, let there be light. And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and he separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness night. And evening passed, and morning came, marking the first day. Now, I need you to see something here. The Bible begins by saying that God created everything, but it was still without form. So it can be a little bit confusing there. It's basically saying God brought into existence everything in this deep, dark, it's almost like poetic the way it's saying. It's like a sea of energy and potential, a chaotic, unbridled, uninhabitable abyss. It was just chaos, complete disorder, energy and potential without any guidance or boundary. That's what the deep waters are. It's so every person reading this back in ancient times would have been fearful of them. It's the stuff of nightmares. I mean, when you think of the deep waters, I want you to think of like when you go to the ocean in the summer, when you go to the beach and you look out at the ocean, you see it's, wide. You look at the horizon, it's deep and mysterious. Now imagine going to the ocean at night. You ever been to the ocean at night? You look out and it's just like vast, right? Now, when I was younger, we used to go body surfing at night, and that is awesome. It's total chaos. And what we would do is sometimes we would swim out past the breakers. And when you're out there on like a moonless night, it's dark, you can only see like 10 feet in front. It's just like, it's very dark. And all you have is hearing. And so you hear the waves breaking behind you, and they're getting softer and softer because the ocean is starting to pull you out. And you're over your head. And you turn around, and like I can see it right now, you just stare at the horizon. And there's this overwhelming feeling, sort of panicky feeling you have. You're treading water in the dark, and you're staring at thousands of miles of deep, dark ocean. That's terrifying. That's the idea I want you to think of when you think of the abyss, the dark waters of chaos. And everyone reading it back then would have thought, oh, okay, well, the next step is for God to go to war with that abyss, to wage war and to claim victory over the abyss. The Babylonians said that this chaos was like a dragon, not the dragon we were talking about at Christmas time, there was a lot of dragons back then. So this dragon's name was Tiamat, and the Babylonians were like, you gotta defeat this dragon, and there were gods and goddesses and battles and victory. That's how it was supposed to work. You defeat the fear and you create the order. But see, God is different. He's not a myth. This is not some religious story. That's what makes the Bible so different. God doesn't defeat the chaos. It's not a dragon. It's matter. It was created by him. There is just one God and all this random energy. So what does he do? He uses it. He arranged this disordered, chaotic abyss into everything we see in our universe today. Everything we see screams of order and function and structure. He gave shape to it. He wasn't shaped by it. That's a key thing. I mean, look at the words. Go ahead and look in the Bible there. Verse 1 says he separated the light from the darkness. He set limits on the chaos. He named the darkness. He named the light. He worked with it to create order. If you look in the next verse, look in verse 2, it says he divides the waters. He sets limits on them. He doesn't battle chaos. He shapes it. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but this kind of gives me tingles. I think it's the coolest thing. I just love how our Father in heaven is so amazing. And I hate that word amazing. It's like, I want a better word for it. Big, powerful, wise. God uses the chaos because he's not threatened by it. He wasn't terrified. He was intrigued. This whole opening of Genesis is more than just a description of creation. It is a revelation of the God who hovers over the chaos. He walks over the water of the chaos. He reveals himself of the Lord of everything I fear. Because fear has no authority with God. Absolutely none. And we get to call him Father. Isn't that crazy? We have a connection with that thing, that person, that being. And so this is really good news. But there's also a downside. It's good news, bad news type of thing. Everything is like that. He's got good news. God walks on the water of chaos. He literally walks on the water of chaos. He is the Lord of the thing I fear. Now here's the bad news. God uses the chaos, but it's still there. He doesn't always take away the things that freak us out. He doesn't always get rid of the things that make us anxious. No, he reveals himself in the midst of them because God doesn't get rid of all of our enemies. And because of that, fear still exists. The waters are still deep. The darkness is still dark. Fear is real, but it's no longer in charge. It doesn't get to define reality anymore. It doesn't get to shape you. And I struggle with this. I get it, sorta, but I'm not entirely sure why God doesn't just fix everything and make everything easy for us. But what we find here in Genesis 1 gets echoed throughout Scripture. It just seems like this is the way that God works. God loves to work with the chaos of anxiety. He loves to work with the chaos of stress. All the people who walked with God in the Old Testament, they all had hard roads. Some nights were filled with anxiety. Some days they had to walk through fear. And God revealed himself in the midst of the darkest and most terrible times. We see this in the struggle of Moses. We see this with David. David gives us a lot of our Psalms. Read any of the Psalms sometimes. They're filled with David struggling with God, like, oh my God, how long am I going to have to deal with this? You got Joseph, Esther, Daniel, Ruth, all men and women who struggled with God, had messy and anxious times in God's presence. And even God didn't spare his own son. The night before he went to the cross, what was he doing? He's pleading with his friends, would you please stay up with me? I'm anxious. I'm nervous about this. So even Jesus went through this. And I'm not sure why, but God seems to use the moments of our fear to show up and reveal himself, even if it doesn't get rid of the thing that terrifies us. So I want to show you a really cool example of this. It's Mark chapter 6. Go ahead and go to the New Testament, Mark chapter 6. If you're using our Bibles, it's on page 767. And as you're turning there, there's something really cool I want to kind of set up here a little bit. Make sure that we know kind of some of the background on this. As you're turning there, there's a great story of how Jesus works in the midst of fear. You think you have fears? I mean, this is like a fear fest, okay? It's a fear-a-palooza. Let me just set up what we're about to read. The context for this is that Jesus set out his disciples to preach. He sent them all out. He said, I want you to go preach. They go out for a period of time. They come back. When they come back to him, they find out, now think about this, they find out that John the Baptist was beheaded. So let me just help you understand this, repeat this again. They come back, and one of their friends, John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, his head was chopped off. And the reason his head was chopped off is he was doing the same thing that these disciples just spent the last few weeks doing. So that's a little nerve-wracking, right? It's not good news. So Jesus wants to have them get away with him, and he says, look, let's just digest this. Let's go to a solitary place. And so they get in a boat, they go to a solitary place, the crowds follow. And when the crowds show up where he lands, he's like, okay, well, he has compassion on them. He preaches the whole day. He talks to them, knowing that his cousin was just murdered, right? And then he does this miraculous, fish and loaves. Everybody gets fed. It's thousands of people. And it's a long day. He finally sends his disciples off in a boat to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. He's like, guys, seriously, go to a quiet place. We're going to rest and regroup over there. And that's where we start off in verse 45. So all of that has happened. And chapter 6, verse 45, 767. Starts off verse 45. Immediately after this, Jesus insisted that his disciples get back into the boat and head across the lake to Bethsaida while he sent the people home. After telling everyone goodbye, he went up to the hills by himself to pray. Late that night, the disciples were in the boat in the middle of the lake, and Jesus was alone on the land. He saw that they were in serious trouble, rowing hard and struggling against the wind and the waves. About 3 o'clock in the morning, Jesus came toward them, walking on the water. And he intended to go past them. Circle that, underline that on your little Bible app thing there, click it and highlight it, whatever you want to do. But because we're going to come back to that. There's something really interesting there. Why? I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself, but why did he want to go past them? It doesn't make sense to me. We're going to come back to it. Verse 49. But when they saw him walking on the water, they cried out in terror, thinking he was a ghost. But they were all terrified when they saw him. But Jesus spoke to them at once. Don't be afraid, he said. Take courage, I'm here. Then he climbed into the boat, and the wind stopped, and they were totally amazed. For they still didn't understand the significance of the miracle of loaves. Their hearts were too hard to take it in. So let's look at a few things here. This is a pressure cooker of fear for the disciples. Now you got to remember that they lived on the sea. So they're not little snowflakes. They're not little cupcakes that get scared by everything. They're used to this. But there are several things at play. And the first is that, hey, John the Baptist just got his head chopped off. He got murdered, okay? So they're a little bit nervous about that. Second thing is they get into a boat at night. And there was a superstition back then that ghosts and demons kind of haunted you at night. And so that's probably playing on them. And it would definitely have been a stronger superstition for them back then than we have today. But even today, at 3 a.m. in the morning, excuse me, I don't care who you are, you're still freaked out at 3 a.m. in the morning. It's the darkest darkness. And so you've got that weighing in on them. And also, they're in a boat. Remember, they're on the sea. And the sea was a picture of all that was chaotic. In fact, they had this idea back then that large bodies of water went straight to the devil. And that's where all the sea creatures came from. That's where all the Leviathan came from. So they were freaked out by that as well, I'm sure. And then they run into a storm. So it's like the trifecta, right? They run into a storm. Storms were often the symbol of God's power and anger and judgment. So you put all these things together and they're starting to wonder, are we doomed? Because this is pretty bad. We talk about this, but put yourself in that position. In the middle of the night, middle of the sea, middle of the storm. And Jesus sees them from the mountain. And where he's praying from, he sees them and he decides to walk to them on the water, which I think is so cool. This is like an action movie in my mind. I want Jesus to come down and be like, yeah, I'm going to change everything. And just completely bring peace, okay? Transform the moment, Jesus, this is such a great opportunity for you to do something amazing. But then you run into verse 48. And what does it say in verse 48? If you highlighted it, you see he intended to go past them. Like, what is the deal here? Like, you're wasting a moment. This is a perfect spot to highlight your power and your control, and you can bring peace to any situation. So, we obviously need to figure out something here, and I want to explain something. There's something interesting about what Mark talks about here. When it says he intended to pass them, it doesn't mean that Jesus was ignoring them. He's actually revealing himself. There's something deeper going on here, and this whole episode is about Jesus declaring that he's God. So, big picture here, we need to back up, and we need to say, like, Jesus walking to them on the water was a declaration of his divinity. It was saying, I'm God. The Jews back then would have known this was a symbol. This was a picture of Jesus saying, I'm God. Job 9:8 says it clearly. It says, God alone walks on the waters. And the Jews knew that. They knew that God alone walks on the sea. He alone hovered over the dark waters of the chaos. We just read it in Genesis chapter 1. So when Jesus is walking on the sea, he's basically saying, I'm the guy. I am God, which is awesome, okay? But then you run into verse 48. It's like, so why does he intend to pass by them? So I'm going to show you something here. This is really cool. It's like in movies, you find Easter eggs, where the director meant to like hide something. This is an Easter egg. You're going to see this, okay? So the Jews would have understood that when he says he intended to pass by them, that word, that phrase, pass by them, is a phrase that really intimates that this is God. And it's a phrase that's used a few times in the Old Testament that indicates whenever God wanted to reveal himself. If you look at Exodus, when Moses wants to see God and God passes by when God passes by Moses, that is the whole phrase there of passing by. You see the exact same phrase used in Mark. Same thing in 1 Kings. When God is passing in front of Elijah, it says his passing by revealed it. So God is revealing that he has ultimate authority over their fear, even when they're afraid. That's why God picks the middle of a storm. He's revealing himself. And again, this is something I really struggle with because I have such a hard time with this decision. I want God to come in and make it all better, to relieve them. I want relief. I want to calm their fears. But hey, newsflash, Jesus is a little smarter than me. And I'm glad that Jesus does this because he knows if he calms the storm and then he reveals himself, they learn that storms are dangerous and our safety is dependent on our conditions. But if Jesus reveals himself within the storm and doesn't take it away, then we learn that the storms are not the end and God's presence within the storm outweighs the threat. Let me repeat that. God's presence within the storm outweighs the threat of the storm. So now just take that storm word out and put in whatever you're dealing with right now. Any fear that you're struggling with right now. For some reason, God prefers, it seems, to be with us in the fear, not relieve us from the fear. See, we got to remember this. It says that Jesus saw them, and that is the big fear of our day. Am I seen by God? Does he see me? We talk about this, like I want to be seen. And that is like a cultural thing. It's a cultural moment for us. And oftentimes we measure whether we're seen based on whether we're delivered from our problems. We think that God doesn't see us because the storm is still there. We're still in danger. But the whole point of Mark 6, I really hope you see this, it's not to be seen, it's to see. It's for them to see Jesus and that God is bigger than the storm, that they can get through the storm as God draws near to them through it. Jesus sees them, but then he comes to them and says, take courage. It's I, don't be afraid. In the middle of the sea, in the middle of the night, in the middle of the storm, we don't need relief, we need revelation. We need God to reveal himself to us in the middle of it because we can worship God in the middle of the fear because fear may be present, but it's no longer in charge. And that's why I said this is good news and bad news. Following God, it's not easy. Following Jesus is not easy. Sometimes God intervenes, and sometimes he doesn't. And Scripture does not ignore this. It does not pretend that it all works out and everything's rainbows and puppies. We see it in this story. Jesus eventually calms the storm. He eventually brings calmness to here, right? But then 50 miles away, John's body is beginning to rot because he was murdered. Same God, different outcomes. And the Bible does not smooth this out. Jesus does not come walk into the water and say, hey, I know you're scared. Let me take care of you. He comes to them and says, I know you're scared, but it's because you don't yet know who I am. And I need to reveal myself to you in the midst of all this. And that's why Mark says their hearts were hardened. You notice that he says their hearts were hardened, and they didn't understand the whole thing with the loaves and the fishes. He's making a point. The loaves and the fishes should have said, this is God. The walking on the water, this is God. But they were still like, they were still fearful. And so we get to learn the lesson over their shoulders. Think about it. If Jesus only loved us by removing fear, then faith would collapse every time fear returned. But because Jesus reveals himself within the fear, faith can survive anxiety. It can. Don't believe the lies that somehow if you're anxious about something, you can't have faith. That's baloney. Faith can exist in uncertainty. And it doesn't just survive or exist, it gets anchored. It deepens. Fear can be a fertile place for faith to grow. And so here's what I think. I could be totally wrong about this. I think that God's calling us to something bigger in all this, especially in our fear. Because tomorrow, you're going to wake up and the storm's still going to be there. The email will still come. The diagnosis won't magically disappear. The relationship will still be strained. You're still going to have that physical feeling of anxiousness. And the first thing you need to do, you need to name the fear. You put a name on it. You need to name it. Unnamed fear is sovereign. Name it, articulate it, give words to it. Stop treating it like atmosphere. It's kind of like, well, it's just everything. Put your finger on it. God named the light and the dark, and he separated it. That was one step of control over it. You keep saying things like, well, I'm just stressed, or I'm just tired, or I'm overwhelmed. It's complicated. I'll be fine. No, name it. Like now, right now, as we're talking, you probably came in here thinking like, okay, I'm a little bit concerned about this, I'm anxious about this, I'm worried about this, I'm fearful about this. Like actually say it under your breath right now. What are you fearful of? Anxiety grows when it's unnamed. Write it down, give it a name. So it might be like this. I'm afraid I'm gonna lose my job. I'm afraid my kid won't be okay. I'm afraid this relationship won't survive. I'm afraid I'm gonna fail. Do you see what that does? Just naming it, just even saying it on your breath right now, it shrinks it a little bit. Don't let fear shrink you. You shrink it, name it, divide it, control it, shape it, okay? So that's just step one. Once you have named it, the second thing you need to do is ask, who's in charge? Excuse me, who's in charge here? Ask better questions. Stop asking fear-shaped questions. Fear-shaped questions are like, well, what if this happens? And what if I do this? And what if they do that? And what if I don't? How do I make this thing go away? How do I go back to feeling okay? How can I just escape this? How can I jump to the next thing? Those open-ended questions point you in the direction that anything can happen, and that gives authority to anxiety and fear. Faith-shaped questions are simpler. Do you want to hear a real simple question? This should be your question. If you're struggling with something right now, this should be your question. Who's in charge here? Who is actually Lord here? Notice, it's not, how do I escape this feeling? It's more like this. What authority does this feeling have in my life? And the answer is none. Because fear feels ultimate, but it's not. So I'll give you an example. Maybe it's a relationship issue. And it's like, okay, so now I've named it. I'm afraid if I share how I feel, she's going to leave me. So the second thing you do is you ask who's in charge. Okay, so who's in charge here? Am I in charge? Is it up to me to figure out how to manipulate this person into staying with me? Or is God ultimately in charge? Do I listen to my fear, keep it all bottled up, and then knowing that nothing good comes from that? Or do I listen to my God, who's going to be there when I'm dead, who calls me to walk in honesty and obedience? He's the actual one in charge here. Maybe it's not a relationship. Maybe it's at work. Maybe you're thinking, okay, my job requires me to lie or do something I know is wrong, and I'm afraid if I refuse, I'm going to get fired. So again, I didn't say this was easy. I just said it's simple. First, name it. I'm afraid I'm going to get fired for doing the right thing. Then the second thing is like, so who's in charge? Who's in charge here? Okay, well, if God's in charge of my security in life, then it really doesn't matter what this mid-level manager is telling me what to do. Because he's not responsible ultimately for the security of my life. My relationship with God is bigger than my relationship at work. So write that down. Name the fear. Ask who's in charge. And you know what? I want you to get lippy with your fear. When you hear your fear talking to you, I want you to get lippy. Give it some attitude. Be like, who's in charge here? I want you to be a spiritual Karen. Take me to the top. I want to see the manager on this. Because God is the one in charge here. Seriously, if that's what you need to do to put that in your head to remember that lady at the baseball game. I want you to go over and demand the ball back from fear. Be like, right now. Who's in charge here? Go to the top. And third, if God is in charge, then the only thing left to do, if you know that he is the one in charge, you just say, so what do I do? Okay, God, what do I do? And this might be a hard part because we want relief. We want instant problem solved. We want God to swoop in and make everything better. Look, Jesus does not say, follow me and I'll make you very comfortable. He says, follow me even when it's hard. So, listen, in some ways it's real simple. Following means doing the next right thing, even while your heart is racing. So you've named it, right? And then you demanded, like, who's in charge? Now you know who's in charge. Okay, God, what is the next right thing to do? What would Jesus do in this situation? And you break it down into small steps of obedience, and you do it. You name it, you ask who's in charge. That reminds you that God has a purpose in all of this, and then you ask him what to do. What's the next small right thing to do? So you send the email. You have the conversation. Maybe it's like a social thing, like you're just scared to be in social situations. You put yourself out there a little bit more. When everybody's putting on their jackets and they're getting ready to go out, hey, is there room for one more? I'd like to go. I know some of you guys are like, well, I'd never say that. Like maybe that's your small step. Speak up at the next meeting. Ask a question. Instead of silently agreeing to everything, you speak up and say, well, I think I see it a little bit differently. Try it. You know, we have all kinds of groups here at LCBC. Go to lcbcchurch.com, right, and look up Group Finder. We have all kinds of groups. You got 55 plus, you got men, you got women, young adults. If you're a young adult, you can be in any one of our groups. And I know you're like, oh my gosh, I would never do that. Just take the first small step. Go on there, sign up for a group. You don't have to go. You can do that tomorrow. But right now, just sign up. Just tell yourself, like, I'm going to sign up, but I'm not going to do it. That's fine, okay? Just take the small step first. And then tomorrow, I'll be like, oh, now I got to go. You know, like, that's okay. Just take them in small steps. And, you know, maybe we're talking about bigger things here. Maybe you feel like God's calling you into something big, stuff that you're too afraid to consider. The job change, adoption, moving, being available for the people you love. But more often than not, it's just the small steps. Maybe it's a little, you're just standing next to somebody in line. And you just start conversation, you know, like, long line, huh? Cold out there. Yeah, it's cold out. Some of you are like, I could never do that. Challenge yourself a little bit. You know, you see somebody, like, oh, I like your hair. Guys can't do that. That's a little weird. Be like, nice car. Thanks, bro. Yeah, that's how you do that. But look, when you go somewhere, what's your first step? You know, you're going somewhere and everybody's sitting down. It's like, oh, I'll sit on the end because I'm going to leave first. No. Sit in the middle. Push yourself. Stay a while. Show up. Start praying again. Don't withdraw. Don't numb out. Don't stop living. Look, growing in this area, trying to follow Jesus and all this isn't going to look like some miraculous transformation. It's just going to be one small faithful step that you decide to take and you keep on doing it. And see, this actually helps to overcome fear and anxiety. When you can face your fear and break them in little achievable goals, you can work on them one at a time. You see progress, and that gives you boldness for the next step. And do you see how wise God is in all this? How much of a great counselor he is? we get stronger by facing the fears that we have rather than being relieved of our fears. God shows up in it. He reveals himself in it. It's how we know he has broken the power of fear. It's because fear is real, but it's no longer in charge. And it's funny, like, I got to the end of this and I'm like, but there's more. I think what God is telling us through this, through his word, I think God's saying, man, I want you to live again. It's time to come alive again. We've kind of retreated too much. We've gotten too scared of too much. You think like, oh, you can't talk to the person next to you in line, you might get shot. And some of you think that. It's time to live again. Let down the walls a little bit. And it's funny because I wanted to make sure you knew this. Everything I just told you is true for now. And this is important. This is like a key concept. I don't want to confuse you. I want you to walk away with Karen and be like, yeah, come on, I'm going to go to the top. I want you to have that in your mind. But I also want you to remember this. This is not for always. It's just for now. We didn't even get to explore the rest of Mark. There's so much more to say in Mark chapter 6. But the last thing I want you to walk away with is that God's best for us, that his best plan is that we are going to just be with him in the midst of being afraid, anxious, and overwhelmed. God revealing himself in the storm is not the end of the story. It's what he does for now while he's putting the pieces together to return and live among us. I don't know if you know this, but while all this junk's going on in the news, all the stuff that's happening on social media, it's all distraction. It's all show. And there's stuff going on behind the scenes that God is working on that is so much better. And he's putting things in place for when he returns. Listen, there is a plan. Don't get distracted by the fear. There is a plan outside of this. Death will be put to death. Sin will lose its grip. Fear will turn to laughter. And keeping that in mind, it helps what we talked about today seem a little bit easier. Because there is a plan and it's coming. So listen, fear is real for now. The dark is dark for now. The storm, the sea, the chaos, all for now. But it is not forever. And that's important. That needs to be said. Knowing that there's a plan helps us live in faith for now.